Oh, they've done that already. That's the problem. I mean, they've already done that, and that's my great concern. And that's why I mean, I think we should talk about this in the panel, but I would want to engage with Eusebius on that point. I mean, philosophically, I'm an agnostic, and I would call myself that by and large. So, I mean, I'm firmly committed that God doesn't exist. But as soon as you say that, you put yourself in that camp, and people, in a sense, have negative connotations, and then you don't get your message across. So I often might soft soap that and say, well, actually, I'm an agnostic, and that means that I'm just like, so let's take the proposition that smoking causes cancer. Of course it does, but we don't know that for sure, because that's how science works. We can't know anything for sure. So I'm an agnostic in that sense. I'm 99% certain that no particular God exists, but I'd still call myself an agnostic, and I think that's my key point of difference. So there's a political choice and an epistemic choice. So yes, the atheists have done that, but because of social media and because of the reach of somebody like, say, for example, Dawkins, and because people tend to be more obnoxious in social media, I think we overemphasize the number of those sorts of atheists that there are who are giving us a bad name. And I think that the ones of us who are more, the word's all tricky here, because I don't mean to be accommodating or moderate or non-critical, but it's the language that needs to change. And those of us who adopt the more persuasive and diplomatic language need to start being louder. And I don't mean louder as in strident, I mean louder as in frequency of communications. So yeah, I agree. Okay, so here's an example of how a religious mindset gives rise to really unpleasant and toxic thoughts about what humans are capable of. Right there. Because I am one day going to be an old person, and there is a social contract, and if I go around abusing them and feeding them dog food and pushing them into streets and things like that, I'm creating an environment in which that's more likely to happen to me. I'm invested in the well-being of other humans because I'm one amongst however many billions of you there are, and if I act like an arsehole, then you're going to treat me like one. So it's perfectly due to self-interest that I don't do those things. Yeah, I mean, as you know, there's some work that's being done on this, and I think it's at the moment completely undecided. We don't have any clear data one way or the other. Some people suggest that the religious tend to, live longer and be happier and so forth, and some say the opposite, as in the kind of Sweden-Norway sort of example. The question for me is that it's possible that it might do no work either way. In other words, not cause any harm nor cause any kind of excess good in people's lives. But I'm still struck by the fact that you never encounter, even if religion doesn't generally cause harms, you encounter some instances of people citing religion as their motivation. So do we just discount that? Do we say that wasn't your motivation? Or do we say that you had some predisposing condition, which I think is what you're suggesting, that would have made you find some vehicle, some excuse for perpetrating that evil on the world? I don't think we know the answer to that. But while it's still possible that religion is playing a causal role, and if it's also true that religion plays no positive role that can't be substituted by something else, this seems to me like a safe bet. I can't say that I know it to be true, but it seems like a sensible strategy. I do see your concern, but I think we'd again need to get a massive data to really grapple with that, because some people are going to be impoverished by religion, but all of that tithing, let's assume the church isn't corrupt, etc., is going to go towards empowering people who wouldn't otherwise have been empowered. So if the church does do charitable work with that, then your tithe, which might make you poorer, is going to make somebody else richer. So we'd need to see the data on aggregate. But I do see your concern that it's difficult to... Perhaps not. I mean, yeah, and we should be reminded of the kind of the Bill Gates sort of examples of massive charity and completely non-religious. I agree with you entirely. I mean, I'm an entirely pragmatic person about these things. And it's certainly true. I mean, people who think that religion creates morality are just not thinking it through at all, because as you say, we see it in the great apes. We see the same altruism. We see people looking after their kin, etc., who don't have language, never mind religion. So, any higher order being is going to have this. But I do at the same time think that it might be a shortcut to learning some of those things. Because unless you have the means, the education, the money, etc., to do the kind of education that most of us in this room presumably have benefited from, if you're living in a slum or something, then I think it might provide you with a route in to some of those values and a way to reinforce some of those values. And yes, most humans will come to them, but I think that kind of community can help reinforce them. So I do want to replace it, but in a way that doesn't disrupt the good that it might be doing. Yeah. Of course, science can be used for malicious ends, but the good thing about science is that it's self-correcting. And going back to my slide about falsification, it's self-correcting. So if people are perpetrating some gross abuses of animal, whether non-human or human, rights, then other people can call them on that. Other people can say, you know, we expose you, we don't need this data well enough or strongly enough, or if we do need it, then you can make the case, or we have to do those experiments on the chimp or on the rat or on the human or whatever it might be. So there's a built-in safeguard is the point. But with the religious argument, there isn't one, because the beliefs aren't falsifiable. You can say, now do these things, and you can't tell me that I'm wrong, because no possible evidence can have an impact on me. Well, I mean, that's precisely why I organize this, is to try to help foster that sort of movement, and hopefully we can do this sort of thing more regularly. There are little, I mean, I formed the FSI mostly because there are little pockets of people doing exactly this, you know, every day or every week in various parts of the country, and they congregate on different little web portals or on different Facebook groups, and we need some consolidated voice. We don't have to agree on everything, but we need to agree on some basic things, and that's what I was trying to do by creating the FSI. So my answer to some extent is to say that it's in your hands. One can't wait for other people to start movements. You can join them if they exist, or you can start them yourself. But it's that mentality of waiting for other people to sort things out for us that I think gets us into trouble. So yeah, we do need a movement. We need to be more active about these things. The religious front has centuries of machinery behind them. You know, they've got buildings and publishing houses and, you know, books and authorities, and government listens to them. When last have you had somebody on an interfaith body who was representing a secular humanist view? Not because they have a religion, but because that's a view of morality that needs to be included in those discussions. And every time it happens, every time there's an interfaith committee that government sets up, I tend to email and say, where are the secular humanists? Or I usually say, where am I? But that's a different matter. There are two elements to convincing them. The one is to undermine the existing paradigm, to challenge the way in which they believe things. So if somebody were to say to you something like, without God we will start raping and murdering and pillaging, you say, really? Do you have such a low opinion of yourself? That you think that you would start doing those things? That's the one thing. And the second thing is to show them, as you know, partly through empirical evidence. As I say, in countries where there's less religion, we don't have those catastrophic sorts of scenarios. So to show them that the alternative has a proven track record. So you want to attack it from both of those angles, but both of those angles require having the argumentative tools. And it really, it's that kind of, as you say, I've forgotten the elephant thing you referred to, but that sort of image. So it's the person in your workplace, it's the family member, it's the whatever. I mean, it's a long, slow slog, but the problem is, I mean, it's taken us centuries to get to where we are now, and the corner has turned. Let's not be too impatient about it, I suggest.